Hello everyone. On behalf of Lucy, Zoe, and Kaylee, we'd like to thank everyone for coming today, and to friends and family watching via Zoom. Eric grew up in Port Alberni, fifth oldest in our family of 6 kids. I'm Dean Kutschera, the oldest kid, 10 years older than Eric and Kurt, the youngest at 6 years younger than Eric. Do the math, I guess. On behalf of our family, Chris, Ursula, and Heidi, again, thank you for coming. Today there will be tears of sadness, however, we all know Eric expects tears of laughter. On behalf of Lucy, Zoe, and Kaylee, they would like to share their memories of Eric with you. They've asked Kurt to share their thoughts about his life.
Eric and Lucy met through work and started dating in the summer of 1988. They bought their first home together in Oliver in 1990 and got married the following year. In December 1993, their first daughter, Zoe, was born. To take a new job, they moved to Karamias in 1995 and had their second daughter, Kaylee, the next year. In Karamias, they met their neighbors and lifelong friends, Will and Randy Lindsay, and Eric joined the volunteer fire department. Even after moving to Penticton in 2000, Eric continued to be the bookkeeper for the Karamias Fire Department. Eric held multiple positions at Valley First Credit Union over the years. He retired in 2009 at 49 and made us all very envious. After many years of playing squash and other sports, Eric's needs were shot, so he decided to get into biking. Eric was an incredible husband, father, son, brother, and friend. He cared deeply for his family, near and far, chosen or otherwise. He made friends wherever he went, and he did his best to keep in touch. His kindness and dedication extended to the communities he was part of, from the Penticton biking community, to the Bees hockey, to the Canadian Cancer Society, and to the Sick Kids Foundation. He made sure the people he cared about had everything they needed. He was always willing to lend a hand. For any tricky problem, you needn't worry. If you had Eric there on the case, he'd figure it out and get it done, eventually. We will always remember Eric for his infectious laugh, his childlike enthusiasm to take on any challenge, and his love for every person in his life. And that's from Lucy, Zoe, and Kate.
Zoe, Kaylee, know that you meant the world to your dad. You were his heart, his soul, and his joy. He was so proud of the remarkable women you've become. Lucy, Eric loved you to the ends of the earth and back. You were his dream come true. You're the reason behind his laughter and his smile. He gave you his heart completely. The best of Eric is because of you. Because of our careers, Eric and I were transferred around BC. Our families never lived in the same cities. We both liked golf, went on golf holidays down south, and we went to the US Open golf tournament together. And Eric, with a grin, every time someone laughed, he said, "We were spectators, not players." As if he thought, well, Eric's good enough to play in the US Open, but he wanted to make sure. So whenever we got together, we always tried to get in a game of golf. Those are great fun times. Share a cart, get caught up on what the family's doing, and just see what's going on in each other's lives. Well, it was discussed which was the best golf course in the interior. No contest for every mountain. where he was a member for years. Whenever Eric came to visit, he came with his personal slogan, "Let the games begin." Whether it was cards, the newest board game, sports, or a barbecue, you knew you were going to have fun. He was like a mischievous elf, poking fun, trying to provoke a reaction from you, mainly at his expense, and always in the spirit of fun and friendship. Living apart, I hadn't realized his passion for biking, till I kept getting these emails advising he was raising money for charity riding his bike. I thought initially I was riding a bike like my old bike, gathering dust in the garage. But I had to read that email again because it said he was riding hundreds of kilometers to achieve his fundraising goal. I had to pick up the phone and say, "What's going on?" Well, after that, twice a year, I get the phone call, short and sweet, "Send money, don't be cheap." In 2018, our group of retired friends decided to go on a bike and barge to the Netherlands. It was a no-brainer. We called Eric and Lucy to join us. He could assist us, old-timers, with biking tips, directions. In true Eric fashion, he adopted the entire group. He was blazing the trail and educating everyone on proper riding techniques, how to properly read who knew it was called the cyclometer on the bike for time, distance, pace, etc. He would ride his pace way ahead of the group, but he'd always circle back to make sure everyone was going in the right direction, make sure no flat tires, and help with anything the group needed. That was Eric, making sure everything was going smooth and happy. The group always joked, "Where's Eric?" And we all, well, at his fast pace and enthusiasm, he must be in Norway by now. But not to worry, he would circle back and make sure the group made it back to the barge on time. My brother was the best, and this world is now a little less bright. Our sister Ursula, who lives in Alberta, could not be here due to her hip surgery, and she sends the following thoughts. "My brother Eric was my tech guy, my travel companion, my deck builder, but most of all, he was my rock, my go-to person. I'm so proud to say I was his big sister, who got to have him in my life for 63 years. His love for people was truly undeniable. He was simply the best."
Our brother Chris would like to share some thoughts, and he's asked me to read this on his behalf. "Elizabeth, Joel, Stephanie, and I were saddened to hear my brother-in-law and uncle had passed away unexpectedly. Nothing can prepare an oldest brother to have their youngest brother leave us in the prime of his life. My heart is filled with sorrow for Lucy, Zoe, and Kaylee. Eric reminded me of our dad and his zest to contribute to his community and to be in service in helping others whenever the opportunity arose. It is a wonderful legacy for any man to achieve. Thank you, Eric, for your service to others. If I could, I would bring a day when your happy memories of him are stronger than your sadness from his passing. He may no longer be physically here, but I'm confident that he will always keep an eye on you. And his spirit will be here to give you strength and support throughout your life. Please accept our deepest condolences for the loss of a husband, father, and brother. Brother Chris and family." Our youngest sister, Heidi, will now come to the podium to share her memories of Eric.
Thank you, Dean and Kurt. By the way, Kurt is related to us, even though you don't see him on that photo up there. It's my youngest brother. We do love you, and we're proud to have you part of our family. Hi, my name is Heidi, and I'm the fourth child of Fred and Teresa Kutschera. My dear brother Eric was born shortly after me. We were exactly 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day apart, which I would often share with others because I thought it was so neat and special, just like my brother Eric. Eric and I actually shared a bedroom together for 8 years. I have a vivid memory of a particular Saturday morning when Eric and I wanted to watch cartoons, but Mom said we had to clean up our room first. Our room was extremely messy with clothes and toys strewn all over the floor. Eric and I looked at each other, and Eric had the brilliant idea of shoving everything under our bunk beds, which, driven by our love of cartoons, was accomplished in only a matter of minutes. We were so proud of ourselves and immediately went to get our mom, who shortly upon arrival lifted up the covers of the bottom bunk bed to reveal Eric's hidden plan that totally backfired on us. Eric and I just stared at each other in total disbelief. How in the world did Mom figure that out? Needless to say, Mom made sure we cleaned our room properly that day, and we never got to watch any of our favorite cartoons. Every summer, our family would go on a vacation in our beloved Ford Falcon station wagon. I still remember watching my dad set up our mini canvas lawn chairs, the red one for me and the blue one for Eric, in the very back of our station wagon, facing out towards the back window. I wish I had a recording of all of our childhood conversations in the back of that station wagon, but I just remember how wonderful it was to have my brother Eric as my traveling buddy. Growing up, Eric and I played table tennis, street hockey, board games, and cards together. We walked to and from school together also. In fact, Eric's legs were so skinny that we nicknamed him Toothpick Harry. Eric and I shared a paper route and had another job alongside our brother Chris, setting pins at our local bowling alley. We walked over a mile each way, arriving home late at night for this job. Eric and I worked together for many years. This was Eric's introduction to hard work and managing money, which followed him throughout his life. Eric was someone you could always count on. He was with me at the bank when I signed the papers for my first home. He supported me with my fundraisers. He was there for me when I needed to have a thing or two fixed or when I needed some advice. We were both Maple Leaf fans, and now more than ever, I wish Toronto would have won the Stanley Cup this year, if only for Eric. Lastly, when I needed a jersey for our school's Jersey Day, Eric gave me a V's shirt, which I will now always wear and cherish in honor of him. Eric, the only solace I have through all of this is the sure knowledge that one day I will see you again. Until then, thank you for all that you've done for me. I love you.
I would also like to share some thoughts about my brother. Eric was my oldest brother by 6 years. When I was 10, I idolized him. Eric seemed to know everything and could do everything. He was my $6 million man. Faster, stronger, better. Perhaps I became a teacher because of him. He taught me so many lessons. If you wanted to start a fire in the fireplace, use gasoline. Not only would the wood catch on fire, but so would your parents' carpet. When shoveling the snow on the roof, Eric knew the easiest and fastest way to get down, right through the flimsy patio roof. Of course, being my hero, he made sure he landed perfectly on his feet. Eric didn't use many words to express his emotions. When our grandfather Opie died, he said, "Let's go downstairs and play table tennis." Before we started, he said, "This game is for Opie." Eric was a hockey goalie with fast reflexes. Dad and Eric were loyal Toronto Leafs fans. Year after year, when the entire family was yelling in vain for Toronto to win, Mom would calmly remind us all, "It's just a game." Yes, that's the most important lesson I learned about life, was from Eric. I became a Canucks fan. When Eric retired, we had more time to reconnect. Eric visited us in Castlegar. Yuri made Eric her hot pepper jelly, but no matter how hard she tried, nothing was ever too spicy for Eric. That's kind of how he lived his life. I took him to the Columbia River to show him how I fished from the shore. Finally, I would prove to my older brother that he was no longer the best at everything. He made 2 casts and immediately caught 2 rainbow trout. He turned to me and said, "Wow, that was easy, 2 fish in 5 minutes. How often does that happen to you, Kurt?" "Never," I replied. Recently, we traveled to Toronto together and had a chance to get to know each other better. Eric was so happy when he noticed the Sick Kids Cancer Foundation building in downtown Toronto. He was so proud that in 5 years he had ridden over 10,000 kilometers and raised over $22,000 to help needy kids. On that trip, I saw how much he loved visiting our family members. It was a highlight for both of us to see so many relatives in Ontario and to be treated with so much love. Eric had a special place in his heart for all his cousins, uncles, and aunts out east. Eric and I started a tradition of calling each other on Sundays. He talked about politics, investments, his friends, biking, and of course family. The pride he had in both of his daughters was always evident in the way he talked. Zoe with her new home in Penticton and always being in charge at work. Kaylee continuing her career with Google in Seattle. He was excited about the new chapter he had started with his loving wife, Lucy. Lucy and the girls were everything to Eric. During our calls, we made a rule that we had to end every phone conversation with something good. It was our way of reminding each other to find the good in life. In honor of my brother, I would just like to end by saying, Eric, you were good, very, very good, and I loved you very much.
Our cousin Peter, who traveled here to be with us with his wife Barb from Ontario, was one of our cousins that Kurt just spoke about. Just going to ask Peter to come up and share some of his thoughts from back east and with Eric.
My cousin Eric, our entire family in Ontario sends condolences to our Kutschera family in British Columbia. My sisters Irma and Ingrid, my brother Arthur and their families are shocked as I am with the loss of Eric. My Aunt Lottie, cousin June and Terry, as well as the Shopman clan, extend their sorrow and best wishes. Our mother Annie passed away last year. Eric considered her his mother figure, and he would often call and keep in touch with our family. He became a strong link between the Rebecks and the Kutcheras, who were separated by the provinces. We had wonderful times growing up in Sault Ste. Marie before the family moved to Port Alberni. However, we were blessed with Eric's many visits to the area around Lake Ontario and Superior. A sampling. Eric came with Dean to my mom's 90th birthday celebration where we all gathered in Traverse City, Michigan. Eric brought his outspoken, flamboyant character, his humor, his charm, and Eric really expressed the life and energy and enthusiasm that he carried all the time. He came to Grimsby to help my brother plan and build his complex irrigation system with 5 main zones around his property. He came for my uncle Willie's celebration of life last year with Kurt. Eric kept our family ties and communication strong between BC and Ontario. Eric was a generous man and a fit athlete. I was amazed and inspired with all the rides and distances he accumulated on his bike. In the 5 days before he left us, he rode 120 kilometers, then 36 kilometers, then 65 kilometers, 80 kilometers, and then a golf game. He rode 183 kilometers June 3rd, 132 kilometers June 7th. He's raised a lot of money for the various charities. And he pledged 1 month in August, 2,000 kilometers to raise $4,000. But of course that wasn't good enough for Eric. He had to bump it up to 2,500 kilometers in the month and a target of 6,000. And of course he exceeded that very handily. He was strong, fit, and athletic. To Lucy, Zoe, and Kaylee, he has left us much too early. And I cannot put into words how sorry I am for your loss, so unexpected, with so much more life ahead of him. Thank you for hearing me.
Dear friends, Lucy and Eric were blessed to have so many wonderful friends, some who became family by choice. Lucy wanted to share how much she treasures the wonderful memories that they had with Peggy and John over 30 years. In addition, Lucy would like to share the words of close friends Bill and Wendy, who wrote about Eric. We first met the Kutschera family when Eric was transferred to Carolinas, where he was to take over the Valley First Credit Union as manager. Wendy was the real estate agent, and after a couple of fruitless days of showing Eric houses, Eric finally stated that he liked our house and insisted that we sell it to him. A deal was struck, and Eric and family moved across the street from us. This was the beginning of a long and lasting relationship. Over the next several years, family holidays were taken together, including memorable trips as Yellowstone National Park one year, Lindsay, Mitchell, Jones family reunion, the next, in which Eric fit right in, identifying himself as Cousin Eric. He's still known as Cousin Eric in Skookumchuck, where their reunion took place. Another year found us in Edmonton, where we camped at my sister's house. Eric and Lucy were camping in a tent. Eric, being the woodsman, pitched the tent in a hollow. Unfortunately, it poured rain overnight, leaving the Kutschera family floating in their tent in about 5 inches of water. This was one of the only times I ever saw Eric scared. He pulled Wendy aside, put a handful of cash into her hand, saying, "Quick, take Lucy shopping before she kills me." Lucy was not a happy camper. After several years, we moved apart. Lucy and Eric to Penticton and us to Kamloops. However, we remained close with weekend visits, helping each other with irrigation projects and building projects. As most of you know, Eric was like a big kid, After every visit, I would have to go through the electronics of the house to find out what he might have changed. It was that, or have to wake up at 3 a.m. to find the furnace blasting out heat. Eric, we will miss your youthful exuberance and zest for life. You have made your way into our hearts, with you and your family being recognized as members of our family. Love, Bill and Wendy.
Sorry, I need to take a minute. I didn't realize that Skookumchuck was a real place. Yeah, Dean got that part. Yeah. Eric was a loyal friend. He kept in touch with many of his childhood friends. They called themselves the Group of Seven. They were very, very dear to Eric. Talking on behalf of Eric's friends will be longtime friend Moreno Stefani. So Moreno could come up.
To no surprise, I see a packed house here. Eric certainly deserves that, and I'm sure he's very appreciative that you're here today. I'm going to try and pay a little bit of a tribute to Eric today on behalf of myself and these gentlemen here who will tell you about my set. But no matter how hard, no matter how hard I try to do this, it's never going to be good enough for Eric because he was that good. But I will tell you this, I gave it my 100% here. So let's start with what I wrote. Hello, my name is Moreno Stefani, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Eric, aka Cooch, for pretty much my whole life. So too have the gentlemen behind me. We actually all grew up together in the town of Port Alberni. We maintained a very close relationship, which included Cooch, that has stretched over 55 years. With a name like Cooch, he had to have had friends with funny names too. So ladies and gentlemen, meet Yak, Nige, Boney, Halston, Farm, Felling, BJ, Pole, Lau, and myself, Stal. I know it sounds like a bloody petting zoo. But we're all best buds. With Cooch, it was an unconditional relationship that has proven here has withstood the test of time. We like to refer to ourselves as the Group of Seven, a name coined by ourselves before a trip to the UK in 2010. The trip to Europe was to celebrate our friendship and the turning of the tender age of 50. No surprise, Cooch, who was the last minute call-up for the trip, came off the bench and in typical fashion was the MVP of the trip. He was always the last to bed at night, staying up to socialize with us all, and of course, to make us laugh. Then he would be the first one up in the morning, putting the pot of coffee on and organizing the hundreds of pics that were taken from the day before. Then, at the end of the trip, he composed a video for us all as a keepsake, so we can remember this epic trip for the rest of our lives. Again, another example of how he's always doing things unconditionally to make others happy. I think that will be the theme all day long. All of the fellas behind me wanted to speak today, every one of them. They had a very close relationship with Cooch and wanted to speak about him in their own words. They have bestowed me with the honor of doing that on their behalf, so others here could also have time to speak. We all lost a great friend, and I thank them and the Kutschera family for the opportunity to talk today. Lucy, his beloved wife, grants us the opportunity to say a few words. She asked us to keep it light and somewhat humorous if we could. She said, perhaps he can tell some funny Cooch stories. And now I'm licking my chops. I go, geez, Lucy, you might have to narrow it down a bit. How about some funny Cooch stories in the month of May or something? There was just so many of them. So I managed to come up with a few that in our minds were symbolic of Cooch and appropriate for today. Let's be honest, Cooch was a lot of good things. And I do say this with the utmost of respect. Seriously, the utmost respect. He was a bit of a goof. He had that look. You all know that look. The one that we all just loved, and that infamous loud laugh that only made us laugh just as hard. He was a kid in a man's body right to the day he left us. So I have 3 short stories that might sum him up. So hopefully I can get this right. So it was one of those summers that we all went back to Port Alberni, and there was a place we went to out at the lake. It was actually belonged to Bodie's in-laws. And if you can paint the picture, beautiful lake, house, grass space, and this wharf. And this wharf was basically, had some logs parallel to it for a future expansion. So they were just floating logs next to this wonderful wharf. We used to hang out on the wharf and we'd have some refreshments and some talks, and we'd go swimming and stuff. And anyways, me and Boney had to go back up to the house, probably to get something to drink. And some chips, probably. And so we get to the top of by the house, and we go, where's Cooch? And Cooch was down below. And this is the image we saw. Now, remember there's a wharf and those floating logs. This is him. And then he goes, like, he's by himself. Right? And I go to Boney, what's Cooch doing? Boney goes, I think he's playing on the logs. So here's this 30-year-old man having the time of his life. Again, a kid in a man's body, right there. Story 2. I call this one Cooch Lodge. So some of the boys behind me here own this beautiful place off the coast of Tofino in this private cove. I'll let them tell you about it when you see them later, but just this most gorgeous float house. And we go there every September to gather and have some laughs and camaraderie and do some fishing, of course. So on a typical fishing trip, you know, there's that morning that comes and we start loading up the boat and we're getting ready and we loaded up the bait and the rods and everybody's in there. And in typical boating protocol, the last person has to push us off and launch us, and then he gets on. So in this case, it was Cooch, who's the last person. Okay, Cooch, hey, we're ready to go. And he gives us a push, you know, and we're starting to float out and slowly move forward. And then I'm going, where's Cooch? He's not in the boat, he's not in the wharf, and all you see is this. He's holding on to the edge of the boat because I said, Cooch, what are you doing? He goes, wow, I forgot to jump in. Again, kid in a man's body, isn't he? Okay, story number 3. I call this Cooch 45, 47, 43, 53. So here's the story. This time, this is good. We're out at the float house. This time we're in the water, out in a boat like we're supposed to be. And we had a good team that day. Actually, we had a good fishing day, just for the record. Anyways, the team consisted of Yak, champion boatsman and fisherman. It was actually his boat. Then you had Farm in the back. He was in the back fixing all the lines, bait, changing the hooks and whatever fishermen do, because I'm not really that good of a fisherman. And for that reason, being the greenhorn that I am, I was a net guy. So if there was a fish, call the net guy. So, and then that left Cooch. Cooch was the guy behind the wheel in this case. And one of the jobs of the guy behind the wheel is to call out the depth off the depth sounder. So Cooch, very dedicated as he is, and good with numbers, of course, he would go 43, 45, 47, or he'd calling out the depth, and we'd adjust the lines accordingly. And he was very serious about his job, very committed. Anyways, our experienced boatsman, decides to get out on the edge of the boat, and all of a sudden, he slips, and he's going down. He's going to the ocean, but at the last minute, he grabs onto the railing. Remember this? Anyways, so we've got a situation here. Farm jumps up and goes to try and help him. Net guy, me, I grab the net, just in case. And there's a little bit of chaos in the back. But Eric, 45. 47. Again, symbolic of Eric, isn't it? The group of 7 reminded me of the tennis rivalry Cooch and I had. In our mid-20s and early 30s, we'd all go back to Port Alberni to visit our families. The boys would all come, wherever they were, living in BC at the time, and we would all meet in the city we were born in. The group was tight, so it was not even planned or announced. We just all did it. Anyways, Cooch and I would always arrange a tennis match. It was fierce, it was intense, it was competitive, and hard fought. But to be honest, not very good tennis. But tennis and a rivalry nonetheless. Later on that night, when we all met for beers with the boys, they would ask who won. And I would have to say, Cooch. Actually, I may have said, that bastard Cooch. What the boys did not realize of this is so-called rivalry was that Cooch won every time. The boys did not know this because Cooch never said a thing. He was just that humble. He was one of the most inspirational people we knew. As some of the cycling buddies would concur, Cooch's passion was riding the bike. He would share some incredible stats about his rides that were beyond what average dudes could comprehend. The long 120-kilometer rides that he did readily, at a pace, I may add, to his Fondo racing, to riding for charity. Even his recovery rides were mind-boggling. It's what he did. What it did for us was inspire us to get up and do something. Get active and make a difference to our bodies and our health. There were guys in the group behind me that went out and bought a bike, joined the gym, or started an exercise program because of Cooch. So is it not a tragedy and extremely ironic that the cycling that cut his life short is going to help us live longer? Again, a priceless gift that Cooch left for us unconditionally. We all have heartfelt words for Cooch and all the things that he's done that he did for others. There was no better summarized than what the guys back here have had to say. And I'll give you some example. This is what Farm said. Cooch was the MVP of our Europe trip. He never asked for anything other than a donation for Sick for the Kids, what he was riding for once a year. He would show up for anyone that needed him. He offered financial advice to anyone that wanted it. He did irrigation planning, website design. He watched our kids play sports. He was a volunteer timekeeper for the Bees for years and a volunteer fireman in Oliver. He was there for us all. Felling, he says, Cooch became a fabric of our lives. No matter what we did and where we were, Cooch was part of our DNA. That will continue for the rest of our lives. Boney said, Cooch was always a team player, both in sports and in life. He gave it his all and was enthusiastic through and through. And then from Yak, he says, Cooch trusted us to the highest degree, and we trusted him back unconditionally, which epitomizes what a true friendship is all about. That was Cooch. Speaking of sports and enthusiasm, I think it's fair to say everyone in this room knows Cooch was a big Leafs fan. He always talked with passion about the team he grew up with, watching, and loved. Being an avid Canuck fan, I personally hate the Leafs. I can't stand them. Except for today. Cooch, in your honor, I'm officially a Leafs fan for this day. In 2022, at the Scotiabank Arena, where the Leafs played before 18,000 fans, 18,000 fans stood up and applauded the life of a Leafs legend and a great athlete by the name of Boreas Salmi. It was one of Cooch's favorite players. Cooch would lead the group chat talks about what a great player he was, and how indeed he was a true legend. It is now June 2023. We can all agree, as far as we're concerned, we too have lost our own legend in Eric Kutschera. I know he's listening, and I know he's watching. So let's all stand and give this man the ovation he deserves. I leave you with this. We're all hurting today, as we all grieve the loss of Cooch. We are trying to understand why, how we can possibly recover from this tragic loss. I came across this passage that was sent to me by Lau. It was sent to him by a close friend, because Lau is currently dealing with another loss, the loss of his mother. She passed 2 days after Cooch. I encourage you to listen to every word, and hopefully it helps you understand what we're all going through and helps you heal moving forward. It goes like this. Grief never ends, but it changes. It's a passage, not a place to stay. Grief is not a sign of weakness, nor a lack of faith. It's the price of love. Rest in peace, Cooch. We love you, and we will never, ever forget you. Thank you.
For those who would like to share some thoughts about Eric, please come to the podium now. I know Gary has some words about the charity and that. Gary.
This is going to be hard. beautiful tribute to Eric. I'm sorry I'm so emotional, but that's the way it is. One thing I learned from the comments that have preceded me is that Eric was an expert in irrigation. And he never mentioned that. It's probably because I have a huge yard with an 18-station irrigation system. Eric was one of our constant, consistent, and regular members of our cycling group here in Penticton. I had the pleasure of knowing and riding with Eric since about 2016. 7 great years. We did some epic rides together, some great days. Recovery rides were bullshit. they were always long and tiring. We did one ride, 5 of us with Eric, and this is the longest ride I've ever done in one day. 322 kilometers. Those are epic. And that's what binds people together. I'll speak about Eric's cycling accomplishments and his favorite charity. Eric was the epitome of an avid cyclist. He was motivated to get fitter, improve his cycling, improve his skills in bike handling. And he did so with energy and enthusiasm. In short, he was an addict. In 2022, some of these figures have been mentioned, not this one though. Last year, Eric logged 22,000 kilometers in the calendar year. That's more than the average Canadian spends at his motor car. And it equates to about 820 hours in the saddle. Cycling was a big part of Eric's life, both physically and socially. And he had many friends, as you've seen today. Eric's favorite charity. Since 2018, Eric participated in a nationwide annual cycling event to raise funds in support of kids with cancer. The event is called the Great Cycling Challenge, and is mentioned by, I think one of his brothers. He raised $22,000 for the Sick Kids Foundation in those 5 years. Over on the table to my right, there's a poster like this, which is Eric's page if you went to the online to the Kids Foundation Great Cycle Challenge, because that event's continuing. And starting this year, his local cycling buddies are going to participate in the Great Cycle Challenge, not as individuals, but in memory of Eric Kutschera. We will be honoring Eric by continuing his legacy, and I encourage all of you that knew and loved Eric, his friends and neighbors and business associates, to support the Sick Kids Foundation in memory of Eric Kutschera. One final comment. I wish to recognize 2 of Eric's friends who stayed at Eric's side when he crashed on June 16th. For 90 long minutes, they did all they possibly could to render assistance to their fallen buddy. This had to be a very traumatic experience for both of them. I'm confident Eric appreciated not being alone on that trail, and his family can take some comfort in knowing Eric was not on his own way out there. Thank you, Rob and Todd. This is a beautiful ceremony, but it's still hard. The family has done marvelously well to bring this all together. Thank you. I'm Bruce. I'm a cycling buddy of Eric's. Toothpick Harry, was that the nickname? Man, I wish I knew that. Chicken legs, that's what Eric used to call me. He'd say, how do you even stand on those chicken legs? And of course, being Eric, he didn't say it quietly, right? Everybody could hear it, so I wish I knew about Toothpick Harry. And he used to always talk about his buddies going on the fishing trips, and he'd be talking in advance, and he'd be telling what he was going to cook and what you guys were going to do. And then afterwards, he'd be sitting there, you know, I'd be in a deep discussion with Gary about world politics and stuff like that. And then that kid in the man's body. Hey Bruce, look, this is what I cooked for the guys Friday night. They loved it. They loved all of it. Look at this. Okay, fine. So, no, I've got a lot of pages here, but I write really big, so hour and a half, 2 hours long. But you know, several years ago, a buddy of mine's mother died. She was well into her 90s, and his two sons, maybe kind of in their 20s, did the eulogy. And it was just a beautiful eulogy, just the right touch of love and humor. Really felt like I knew her, even though I'd never really met her. So afterwards, I complimented them. I said, you guys did an amazing job. I don't know how you held it together. And they said, well, we had to hold it together. My dad said we had to because a lot of people didn't know of our grandmother, so we had to tell them what she was like. Well, that's not the thing here. We all know Eric. We know what an incredible person he was. He was really one of the good guys, as they say. Not just one of the good guys, but a good person. But I gotta say, a little bit of a dark side. He always told me he went to the US Open. I just assumed he played in it. He never, I didn't know about that. I tell him, well, I he played in the US Open all the time. Because that's Eric, right? That's the way he was. But as I say, I knew Eric from cycling, the Java Junkies, a group of us. He was part of our little band of brothers and sisters that would ride 4, 5, 6, Eric and Lee 7 times a week. It was his life. My wife, Sherry, and I, we moved here a couple of years ago from Ontario, and I hooked up with these great friends of mine now and started biking with them. And for the first month or so, I was taking pictures everywhere of the beautiful scenery, and then I'd post them on social media for my buddies back in Ontario. And when Eric found out about that, he'd be riding, he'd say, Brooks, round the corner, great picture spot. And he'd stop while I took a picture, and then he'd help me get back to the group, because that was Eric. Last year, there was a pile of glass, broken glass, in one of the bike lanes that we would ride through almost every day. And we'd grumble about it, we'd complain, someone should fix that, but we never did anything. And then one day, we'd go by and it's all gone. Well, Andrew and Eric had gone there, borrowed a broom from the guy in the variety store there, and cleaned up the glass. Actually, Eric cleaned up the glass while Andrew was chastising the owner there for not cleaning it up himself. Because that was Eric. Eric always stopped to help anybody that had a flat. Because that was Eric. Actually, everybody in the group would stop to help everybody with a flat. Especially Chris, he was really good at it. Because that was the group we were. Eric would wave to every cyclist we saw. I mean, every cyclist we saw. Didn't matter if we were flying down a hill at top speed at a tight pace line. Eric was waving at every cyclist we saw. Because that was Eric. We were riding up a hill. You talked about this when you were in Europe. If there's a rock in the road, Eric would double back, get rid of the rock, and then catch back up to us. We were climbing one hill, Rob and Eric and I, and he did it, and I said to Rob, you know he's going to catch up to us again, and there's nothing we can do. Because that was Eric. When we climbed a hill, after we got to the top, or when Eric got to the top, he always went back and rode up with the slow guy. Even if this little guy was Todd that just wanted to wallow in his self-pity and misery back there by himself, Eric was back there. Because that was Eric. Last story. It was a really windy day. Oh, I almost made it. It was a really windy day, just a miserable day for biking, and I'd fallen way off the pace. Andrew and Des, a couple of other bike cyclists, they were falling off the pace a bit. So the group kind of waited for me, and Andrew and Des said, look, we'll wait for Bruce if he ever gets here, and we'll take a shortcut. You guys go up McLean Creek, and then we'll eventually meet up there. Well, I got up to Andrew and Des, and I thought, no, I'm going to go the long way around, so they continued on with the shortcut. The pack eventually caught them, and when Eric realized that, oh, Bruce didn't come with us, he's still way back there, he waited for me to help me into the wind. And I caught up to him, and I thanked him, and he just said, pretty windy day to be biking solo. He sacrificed his ride to help me out. Because I was there. You know, even through the tears, you have to smile when you think of Eric. It's horrible what happened, but you think of Eric and you smile, right? Kid in a man's body. What a great guy. Eric, I only be a couple of years. But man, I'm gonna remember you forever. Thanks, buddy. Thank you.
Listening to all those wonderful stories, maybe Eric's finest attribute was to surround himself with so many wonderful people. Now, Lucy, Zoe, and Kaylee have prepared a remembrance of Eric's life. After the presentation, there'll be food and refreshments where everyone is invited to stay and share any special moments you have about Eric. Some of you may be familiar with this, but for those who don't, after a trip, Eric would take all the photos and turn them into movies. I believe that was mentioned. And since these movies were often an hour long, Lucy and the girls would commonly refer to them as long-ass movies. Thanks, Lucy, for that. While the following is nowhere near as long as an hour, we thought it would only be right to make a short, long-ass movie to share some photos from Eric's wonderful
play. Runners, just what I want. Runners. Two sets of runners. The price is still on them. Yes, let's see what we got in the first box of runners.
Is the price really on
Ooh, Air Nikes for jogging. Thank you so much. Cross trainers. Ooh. Air Nikes for what?
For
Squash?
squash.
Great. Well, thank you, my little Snooky.
And it's very late at night, and she should be in bed, but Daddy went to play with her. There you go. Sit up, honey.
You like sitting up, don't you? Yeah. You like sitting up. Say hi. Say hi to everybody. Over there.
Zoe.
Okay, we're gonna put you down now. Okay, put you down now. No, you don't want to go down. I don't want to go down. Okay, we're gonna put you down now. We're gonna put you down. No, I don't want to go down. Okay, now you have to go down. Okay, here we go. Here you go down. We don't know what to do.
Oh my. You better be careful. Yay!
also to thank Rob and Todd for being there with them, so she wanted to make sure I said thank you. It meant a lot to her for you to be there. Eric touched so many lives. Lucy, Zoe, Kaylee, and Eric's entire family would like to thank all of you for coming to celebrate his life. We would like to remind you of the guest book for the people to sign. Those who'd like to make a donation to Eric's charity, there's a QR scan code, whatever that is, next to the Everyone is invited to stay for refreshments and food and to share the most many stories you'll have of Eric. Thank you once again for attending this celebration of Eric's life. Thank you.